What if the biggest pop icon on the planet suddenly turned her stage into a living, breathing experiment, challenging the very norms of society in front of thousands of fans? Imagine Lady Gaga, known for her flamboyant style and fierce performances, stepping into a modest venue for an intimate event only to launch into a provocative monologue questioning the system itself. How would you react if, in the midst of a concert, your idol started a social revolution right there, sparking debates on every screen and igniting a firestorm across social media? Get ready to dive into the unforgettable night when art collided with activism, and one performance changed everything. Nobody had a clue who was about to turn an ordinary Friday night into a landmark moment of cultural defiance. It was a chilly autumn evening in downtown Los Angeles, and the modestly lit The Velvet Echo, a tiny, slightly worn-out venue known mostly to local music lovers and underground performers, was about to host what was advertised as an interactive fan experience. In truth, this night would be remembered for its raw energy, unscripted moments, and a performance that questioned everything from social norms to the very structure of power. The venue, tucked away on a side street away from the neon glitz of downtown, had seen better days. The walls were adorned with faded posters of bygone concerts and vintage art that told stories of a wilder past. The small, rickety tables were arranged haphazardly, and the low-hanging light bulbs cast long, moody shadows over the chipped wooden floor. Only about 50 people had trickled in, most of them loyal fans hoping for an intimate, personal connection with Lady Gaga. Some had even traveled from out of town, drawn by the promise of something spontaneous and real. Lady Gaga arrived quietly, not in her usual extravagant attire, but dressed down in a simple leather jacket, dark jeans, and a well-worn baseball cap that obscured her eyes. It was as if she wanted to blend into the crowd, to be just another person for one night, a rebel incognito. Few recognized her immediately. Those who did whispered among themselves in awe and disbelief. A young woman near the entrance leaned in close to her friend and murmured, "Is that really Lady Gaga?" while others exchanged knowing glances. Inside, the atmosphere was electric yet intimate. The stage was small, lit by a solitary spotlight that gave everything an almost theatrical intensity. A few local bands had already played, their performances charming the crowd with raw talent, but there was an unmistakable buzz of anticipation as the clock neared the scheduled start time for the interactive experience. Fans mingled with one another, discussing politics, art, and the state of society as they sipped on inexpensive wine and nibbled on pizza slices that were almost too good to be true. At precisely 9 p.m., as the chatter died down and a hush fell over the room, Lady Gaga stepped onto the stage. The live feed was set up for a small online audience, and soon clips of the moment would be shared on social platforms, though no one could yet predict how far this night would ripple. Taking a deep breath, she paused for a moment, her eyes sweeping over the crowd, locking onto faces that ranged from skeptical to hopeful. Then, with a confident smile, she said, "Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're not just here to enjoy music, we're here to ask some tough questions." Her opening line cut through the silence like a knife. The audience leaned in, sensing that this was no ordinary performance. Lady Gaga continued, her tone casual yet laden with purpose. "You know, we live in a world that tells us what to believe, how to behave, and what's acceptable. But what if I told you that a lot of those rules are just constructs designed to keep us in line?" A murmur rippled through the room. Some laughed in disbelief, others exchanged curious looks. But it was clear that her words had struck a chord. She launched into a set that defied expectations. Instead of her usual high-energy dance tracks, she delivered an acoustic performance interspersed with monologues. Between songs, Gaga recited provocative lines about the state of the world, a society obsessed with appearances, controlled by invisible powers, and shackled by outdated norms. "Why do we keep following a script that was written for us?" she challenged. "Why must we accept the status quo when our creativity, our very souls, are meant to break free. Her performance was raw and unfiltered. At one point, she paused, looked directly into the camera that streamed live to social media, and said, "Tonight, I want you to be part of something real. I want you to question, to rebel against the chains that bind us, be they political, social, or personal. Let's tear down these walls together." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Some in the audience cheered. Others sat in stunned silence, processing the weight of her words. The crowd's reaction was immediate and polarizing. Some fans, caught up in the passion of the moment, began to applaud wildly and shout slogans of defiance. "Break the chains!" they cried, their voices echoing through the small club. Others, more cautious, exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if this was an act or a genuine call for revolution. Meanwhile, the live broadcast began to trend on social media, with hashtags like hashtag Gaga speaks out, hashtag break the script, and hashtag rebel with a Gaga quickly gaining traction. Backstage, the event organizers were in turmoil. The unexpected turn of events had thrown their carefully planned program into disarray. The manager, a gruff man named Darren who prided himself on maintaining order, had been preparing for a simple fan meet and greet. Now he was faced with a performance that challenged the very foundation of his venue's unspoken rules. He paced nervously behind a makeshift partition, checking his phone repeatedly for updates as messages and calls from higher-ups poured in. "This isn't what we agreed on," he muttered to himself. "We're losing control." Meanwhile, in the audience, the debate was heating up. A group of young activists in one corner started filming Gaga's set, their excited chatter blending with the cheers and claps of others. One fan, tears glistening in her eyes, whispered to her friend, "I feel like she's speaking directly to me, like she's calling me out to stand up for what's right." Across the room, a couple of older patrons shook their heads in disapproval, murmuring about how celebrities should stick to entertainment and leave politics to the politicians. As the performance wore on, Lady Gaga seamlessly transitioned into songs that carried underlying messages of liberation and resistance. One particularly poignant moment came when she sang an acoustic rendition of a ballad she had written about breaking free from societal constraints. Her voice, soft yet powerful, filled the space as she recounted memories of growing up under strict rules and expectations. "I was taught to hide who I was," she sang, "but now I'm here unafraid, and I want you to be unafraid too." The vulnerability in her performance struck a deep chord with many in the audience, sparking a spontaneous standing ovation that swept across the room. During the encore, Gaga did something even more unexpected. She invited members of the audience on stage to share their stories of defiance and hope. One by one, a handful of brave souls stepped forward to recount personal tales of overcoming obstacles, stories of discrimination, of fighting for justice, of reclaiming one's identity in a world that often demands conformity. Their voices, mingled with Gaga's soothing encouragement, turned the small venue into a microcosm of social revolution. The collective narrative was powerful. It wasn't just a concert, it was a movement. Outside the venue, the buzz was electric. Social media exploded with live updates, and soon mainstream news channels picked up the story. Editors debated for hours on air about the impact of Gaga's performance. Some hailed it as a long-overdue wake-up call that would inspire change, while others dismissed it as a publicity stunt designed to shock and generate buzz. In boardrooms, corporate heads and political pundits analyzed every word, every gesture, trying to decipher the true intentions behind the pop icon's impassioned delivery. Backstage, the tension slowly began to subside as the event drew to a close. Darren, the ever-skeptical manager, finally emerged from his office, his face a mix of exasperation and reluctant admiration. Maybe we needed that," he muttered under his breath, as he watched staff members gather to discuss the aftermath. The chaos had forced them to confront a reality they had long ignored. that the very system they operated in was in desperate need of change. And although the night had thrown their plans into disarray, it also opened a door to new possibilities, a chance to embrace authenticity over artificial perfection. In the days that followed, the reverberations of that unforgettable night were felt far and wide. Media outlets published endless opinion pieces dissecting every aspect of Lady Gaga's social experiment. On Twitter and Facebook, debates raged with hashtags like #GagaRevolution and #BreakTheNorm trending for weeks. Some fans felt empowered, inspired to question the systems in their own lives. Others remained skeptical, worried that the spectacle might blur the lines between genuine activism and celebrity posturing. Lady Gaga herself remained characteristically enigmatic in subsequent interviews. "I've always believed that art is a mirror to society," she explained in a televised interview, her eyes reflecting both determination and quiet melancholy. "If we're not questioning the norms, if we're not challenging the status quo, then we're not truly free. That night, I wanted to create a space where every voice could be heard, even if it was uncomfortable." Her words, both defiant and tender, only deepened the public's fascination with her transformation from pop star to provocateur. Critics, too, couldn't ignore the impact of the performance. Academic circles began hosting symposiums on the role of celebrity in modern political discourse, while think tanks published reports on how such public acts of defiance could influence social change. Some argued that Gaga's performance was a turning point, a bold declaration that the time for passive acceptance was over. Others contended that it risked trivializing serious political issues by packaging them in the guise of entertainment. Yet, amidst the clamor, one undeniable truth emerged. The night had sparked a conversation that would not soon be forgotten. As weeks turned into months, the memory of that event continued to shape public discourse. Fans who had been there spoke passionately about the sense of community and empowerment they felt. Local grassroots movements cited the performance as a catalyst for their own campaigns, and even skeptics found themselves forced to reconsider their assumptions about the power of art to effect change. The Velvet Echo, once a humble little club known only to a niche audience, found itself thrust into the spotlight, its doors now seen as gateways to a new era of cultural dialogue and transformation. In the quiet aftermath, as Lady Gaga prepared for her next tour and the world gradually resumed its daily rhythm, one thing remained clear: that night had redefined what it meant to be a celebrity in the 21st century. No longer was the role confined to mere entertainment. It had evolved into a potent force for social commentary, a platform from which to challenge conventions and inspire action. And for everyone who witnessed that night, whether in person or through the countless videos shared online, the experience was a powerful reminder that sometimes all it takes is one courageous act to change the course of history. By the time the next season rolled around, the echoes of Gaga's social experiment had sparked tangible change. New initiatives were launched to foster open dialogue between artists and activists, and venues across the country began to host events that prioritized authenticity and grassroots engagement over polished production. Lady Gaga herself continued to push boundaries, her artistry forever intertwined with her unwavering commitment to questioning the status quo. And as the debates continued on social platforms, one sentiment prevailed: that in a world dominated by conformity, the courage to break free and challenge the norm was nothing short of revolutionary.